Christian, what the last time we talked about the Cavs, we were so excited. What the hell happened to this team? I I I'm just gonna say it up front. I'm off the Bickerstaff trade. Or the
Yep.
tree. I wanted him gone at the end of the year. I don't think he I think JB Bickerstaff reminds me of a guy like, I don't know, a Sean McDermott or so in Buffalo. A guy who can like rebuild the team, get you to the playoffs first or second round, but can't get you over the hump. And just before this recording started, we found out Darius Garland's going to be out. I don't know if you've heard, Evan
Yep.
Mobley is getting surgery. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. It almost feels like the season's over at this point. I hate to say it. I don't. What the hell happened to this team?
Well, something big is going to happen. I'm just going to make a prediction. I don't know when this episode is coming out. Something big is going to happen, and it's either going to be
Mitchell gets
trade.
traded.
I wouldn't. I would. I was thinking about saying that. I think it's more likely that JB Bickerstaff gets fired. Now, the culture in that Cleveland locker room is so close. I will say this about the Cavs team. They are very close, and they take things very personally. And with that being said, they got dogged, roughed around, beat up by the Knicks. And you saw how they played against the Knicks already this year. They got dogged, beat around, beat up by the Knicks. They're not a tough team. I'm just going to go out and say
They're
it.
not.
They
They're
are not a tough team. And with that, they're not going to win in the playoffs. The difference between this team and the difference between the Cavs team with LeBron on it. Now, I will say this. Last year, if you asked me around this time of year, I might have said this is probably the most fun I've had with the Cavs team since maybe even more than when LeBron was here the second time. But the difference is this team is not tough and they cannot win anything. That LeBron team, just because they had LeBron and the essence of LeBron, made them tough and it made them feared. This team used to be feared when they had the likes of Markkanen and they had obviously Allen then, and then they had Mobley, and that was just 3 7-foot just monsters, and there's no way you could stop that. And it was almost like nothing we've ever seen at least in the modern NBA.
Nope. Completely agree.
All three of these guys could also shoot, by the way, and Markkanen can just put up threes from anywhere. So, and he can post up, and I mean, so while I don't disagree with the Donovan Mitchell trade, I love Donovan Mitchell. Last year, like I said, one of the most fun years I've ever had as a Cavs fan. He didn't win anything in Utah. He had a very similar, in a way, setup in Utah.
Yeah.
Except he didn't have he didn't have another two guard that was as good as Darius. But like you said, now Darius is going to be out for probably 8 weeks. And Mobley's going to be out for probably 8 weeks. So something's going to have to happen. I don't know if it will be as drastic as I don't think they're going to trade Donovan. I think if they traded him, it's going to be at the end of the year in a sort of a sign and trade scenario or something. I think he's going to try to help them get something out of it because I don't think he wants to F them over. I really don't. I think it's going to be something sort of like that if he goes. Now, I have a feeling we might just sign him to a long-term deal and then trade him next year anyway or something, but who knows?
Okay.
With that being said, I think it's more likely that we trade Allen, Jarrett Allen.
So I'm gonna say this. It was the night that they lost the fifth game to the Knicks. Obviously, they won their first round of playoffs. They just got bullied to hell. And
Yep.
I was laying in bed that night, and I was thinking about the team. And obviously, at this point, no free agent moves didn't happen. They didn't have Strus yet. They didn't have Yang. But I'm just sitting there going, everybody says trade Jared Allen. He's soft, and I agree, he is soft. The problem is, I don't believe Evan Mobley is a legit 5. I think his body is perfect for a 4, and I actually think him and Allen complement each other. So I said, okay, we all know the problem with the Cavs. They need a wing. And so I said, well, you just got Mitchell. You're not going to trade Mitchell. I said, the one guy you got to trade was Garland. And I was thinking about what team would it make sense to get Darius Garland that as a legit wing, maybe as a boatload of wings that you could go on and get. And the one team I thought of that I thought would do it would be the Clippers. And I would have called and asked for Paul George. And I thought you would have Mitchell at the 1, Levert at the 2, George at the 3, with Mobley at the 4, Allen at the 5. Paul George is a very good player. I oftentimes don't trust him in the postseason either, but at least it gets you more size on the wing.
Right.
You move Mitchell to the point guard, which he's done very well, by the way, when Garland's been out and Mitchell's had to move to the point, which they
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a backup point because Rubio was hurt and is pretty much done.
Yep.
So that's the move that I would have made. Again, it made sense. Sorry, Cowboys. I don't know if the Clippers would have done it, but it sort of feels like the Paul George, Kawhi Leonard experiment should have ended. And, they should have got a true point guard instead of going out and getting James Harden and Russell Westbrook.
Yep.
That's what I would have done.
Well, unfortunately, it scares me because, excuse me, it scares me because, oh, sorry. I got it. Yeah. And can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. It scares me because I feel like you're right. I would rather trade Allen because I have less of a connection with him, but I really think trading either Garland or Mitchell, to me, it's Mitchell. Now I know that Mitchell is a better player, but I think it's more likely that Mitchell isn't here anyway in the future and Garland is. So if you're gonna pick one, pick Garland. Garland's still very, very, very young, and I think Garland can become something incredible. There were spurts last year. I think he's having the best year he's ever had this year, but I think he can become even better. And with a legitimate wing, like you said, with a legitimate small forward, boy, this team would be dangerous. And it doesn't matter who's coaching, by the way. I think JB could still be the coach, and if we had a legitimate small forward, somebody that could come in right away. And we almost kind of had that, right? With Lauri Markkanen, we almost kind of had the team that you might think, oh, wow, if this builds, if we wait a couple years with this team, this could be an Eastern Conference Finals team, maybe even a finals team. I mean, that's what happens when
The
teams
thing
stick
that
together.
that team was missing, though, was a two guard, and you essentially gave up what you had at 3 in Markkanen for the two guard in Mitchell.
Right. Well, then maybe we should look at, not only head coach, but should we also look at GM? Is Kobe Altman the right option right now?
Yeah, no,
that's also something else to look at.
That's a good point. I don't think Altman's special, but I don't think he's a bad GM by any means. But I also think he's hesitant. Like back in the he was here the last year. LeBron was here the second time. And if you remember, the Cavs redid their whole team at the trade deadline and got to the finals that year. It almost feels like Altman doesn't want to get burned again by giving up so many assets to go get, a guy who could be a game changer or, maybe a guy that wasn't a game changer. I think the Mitchell move on the surface, it looked like, yes, you pretty much had to give up Markkanen. I said, I wish Utah would have fell and would have let us give up a Coro instead. That's
yes.
Maybe you could have sold him on a Coro and Sexton, because I didn't think the Garland Sexton thing was going to work. I thought you had to move one of them.
Yeah.
I always said I thought Sexton was a good 6-man. I didn't think he was a starting point guard in the NBA. I thought he worked perfectly off. But to get Mitchell, I thought it was worth it. But unfortunately, you haven't been able to find a small forward.
Yep. And that's been the biggest problem. And it's been also a frustrating problem because it's been a problem that we've sort of known about for many, many, many years, pretty much since 23 left. So it's like, obviously you want to build your team in other ways, and we have, but some of those picks, like Okoro, who was that number 5 pick, who was supposed to come in and be that small forward, he was supposed to be defense and 3-and-D type of guy. He's just been a D type of guy. He's not even, and I mean that with his grade. I give him a D, but I mean he's good on defense. He's good, but It's also like, where the hell is his 3-point shot? Wasn't that supposed to be fixed some point last year?
Yeah, I mean, I kept saying it. I mean, he's 4 years in the league and he can't make a free.
I mean, it's ridiculous. So it's time to, like I said, it's time to evaluate Kobe Altman. He's made mostly good picks. I think the Mitchell trade was a little much, but we still got a good player. We made it to the playoffs this year, though. and it's not looking good right now. This year has to be the year that we make it past the first round and then make some noise. I mean, that's what has to happen with this team this year. Otherwise, there's not only going to be changes at the trade deadline, there's going to be lots of changes at the end of the year, and it's going to include Donovan Mitchell gone. It's going to include other players gone, and it's going to look maybe a little bleak in Cleveland.
All right, so I want to ask you one off the court question.
Okay.
You and I are both huge NFL and NBA fans. I have said though for years that the NBA is slowly losing popularity to the NFL. And I realized this year they tried to do this in-season tournament to get viewership, but it's not working. I think the NBA season really doesn't start until Christmas. And to be honest, sometimes it really doesn't start until the trade deadline because when the playoffs come, we've seen now it's a completely different sport in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, what were your thoughts on the in-season tournament? And is there anything the NBA can do to sort of spark the regular season? Because even if you tell guys, you can't load manage, like I'm sitting here going, I know April, May, and June is a completely different sport than the regular
Yep.
season. It's hard to get into these regular season games, no matter who you're playing.
I think the NBA doesn't need as many games as it has.
Yep.
I think the NBA, almost like Major League Baseball as well. Like I think we all agree that MLB has too many games. I think the NBA sort of suffers with the same thing. Fans don't get excited about the regular season because they don't even know if their favorite players are going to be playing. And I know that they're trying to help that and fix that with load management stuff and rules against that. But then there's caveats that say, well, if you have injury history, then we'll look the other way. Well, that completely takes it out of it because everyone has injury history in the NBA. All the superstars do. And like I said, I think it's really unfair for fans who I don't blame fans. I mean, I went to an NBA in-season tournament game in Cleveland this year. And yeah, the atmosphere was a little better. People were waving around towels. And like I said, it was a little louder maybe than a normal regular season game. But I've heard regular season games much louder, and it's just because the games are fun. I think the less product you have, the more fun it inevitably ends up being because just more players are rested up. I think you could even just knock it off 10 games. If you don't want to start in the middle of October,
Yeah.
start sometime in November.
I thought
Or start in the beginning of December.
I thought the COVID year when we went from December to July, I kept advocating for it. I think the NBA should stick with that schedule because I really like the playoffs in June, the finals in July. Because
Agreed.
when you have that gap in June and July when it's just baseball, I mean when the NBA was on, it actually made you want to watch baseball more because you're already on the TV watching basketball anyway.
Right, exactly. And like I said, the shorter the sample size, the more people want to watch it, and the more excited they get about it. That's why the NFL is just king because people like I said, they're adding games, but the NFL is never going to get over a 20 game mark, for example, and if it even gets over 18, I'd be shocked. But it's still like very very limited sample size. Lots of injuries happen in the NFL still, but a lot of times you're still seeing lots of good players play either on offense or defense. You don't get that in the NBA. You don't get that in the MLB, and it is because they play so many games and there's so many I'm sore games where people just rest and they don't play. And like I said, it's a detriment to teams. It's a detriment to fans because nobody wants to go. I went to a game before the in-season tournament game this year, and Donovan Mitchell wasn't playing, and they didn't even announce that until like an hour before the game. And like we were like, what? And like just it needs to be more transparent. And like I said, seasons need to be shorter.